A verdict of obedience of the Sharia court on a disobedient Muslim wife. This is a love story that was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyright. All rights are reserved. All characters in this book are fictional, and any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author except by a reviewer who may quote brief paragraphs in a review to be printed in a newspaper, magazine, school journal, or university article. This story is about 3 Muslim girls who were subjected to gross injustice, severe violence, and abhorrent persecution by Muslim men, religious leaders, Sharia court judges, and police officers in the Islamic community and the religion of Islam and its misogynistic, hateful, and abusive teachings against women's rights, which are innumerable. For example, beating of women, polygamy, child marriage, circumcision of the private parts of small Muslim girls, which is known as female genital mutilation or FGM, slaying them in honor killings, inequality between males and females in inheritance, testimony in court, marriage, divorce, men's guardianship over women, controlling their lives and destinies as if they are minors, physically handicapped or mentally retarded, and forcing them to wear the hijab, niqab, or the humiliating burqa, which makes them appear as if they are scary ghosts. Muslim men are allowed by the Quran to have sex or rather rape without the need for marriage captive women of war such as wives, daughters, sisters, and even mothers of the defeated enemies who are called unclean infidels such as Jews, Christians, Hindus, Buddhists, atheists, etc. Islam forbids a Muslim woman to become a president of a country or a boss at work or a judge in court, and she is strictly forbidden to lead men or women in prayer as an imama. Moreover, the Prophet Muhammad said the woman is an unclean creature just like a dog and a donkey, and therefore as a defiled being she annuls the man's prayer if she passes in front of him while he is praying. The Quran likens the woman to the human excrement which spoils the man's ablution or religious cleansing. Many Islamic countries prevent women from going to school and work, and they are not permitted to drive cars, bicycles, or motorbikes. And none of them is allowed to leave the house without her husband or with the muharram man the woman is forbidden to marry, such as her father or brother. They are forbidden to practice any kind of sports, such as soccer, basketball, volleyball, and tennis, and they are not allowed to go to gymnastics, beaches or swimming pools, cinemas, or theaters, or act as heroines in movies or actors in the stage in plays, or be female singers, or compete in beauty contests such Miss World or Miss Universe. They cannot compete in the FIFA Women's World Cup of soccer or football because Islam doesn't allow them to reveal their heads, hairs, faces, hands, shoulders, legs, thighs, and hips, or put short pants like men because each Muslimah woman is a wara or naked creature. They are not permitted to be reciters of the verses of their holy Quran because the Prophet Muhammad said the woman is a wara or naked and her voice is a wara too. He also said the woman comes in the form of Satan and retreats in the shape of the devil. Muslim women are also not allowed to fall in love with Muslim men before marriage or choose their future husbands or life partners. This story is about the 3 innocent Muslim girls, Intisar, Firdaus, and Mona. Chapter 78. Unforgivable Religious Crimes Against Islam. The Sudanese people considered the police case of the runaway disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, who was arrested at Khartoum International Airport, serious religious crimes that had never happened before. If we exclude the Christian community from southern Sudan and the few Coptic families among the 45 million inhabitants of Sudan, the rest have collectively considered the case of apostasy and adultery serious religious and criminal offenses that deserve to be severely punished by Sudanese law. She is accused of committing adultery with her Christian lover Sami, and according to Islamic law, she is supposed to be stoned to death because she did it while under the cover of a Muslim husband named Hassan. She is under the charge of apostasy, which amounts to death, if she refuses to repent and return to Islam within 3 days. She is also accused of forgery, deceit, and high treason and must therefore be punished by secular law. These last 3 charges relate to changing her Sudanese nationality and through deception obtaining Eritrean nationality and through forgery obtaining refugee status and her attempt to flee the country and adopt another nationality in Canada. In light of the serious accusations mentioned above, there is a general acceptance by all Muslims in Sudan that such an apostate, infidel, and adulterous girl should be executed as soon as possible. A serious debate ensued between religious and secular groups about which court should hear her criminal case. The Muslim Brotherhood, Ansar al-Sunnah al-Nabawiyya, the Hijra wal Takfir group, the Mutazila group, and all the Sufi orders have all endorsed the view that the issue is religious and therefore should be judged by the judge of the Islamic Sharia court in Khartoum City. Liberals, intellectuals, feminists, communist groups, and atheists have all taken issue with the views of religious groups and thus argued that the case was criminal in nature and should be dealt with in a criminal court. Although rightists and leftists generally differed on whether the issue was religious or criminal in nature, the two groups mostly agreed that the girl in question had committed heinous crimes and should be tried, convicted, and severely punished by the law. Her sentence would serve as a warning to anyone else who might attempt one or more of her heinous crimes. It is the first time in the history of Sudan that the Muslim rightists and the secular leftists have agreed on something. These two groups are like fire and water or God and Satan. Nothing can make them agree or come close to each other. Only in the criminal and religious crimes of intisar did they for the first time reach an agreed collective decision. Despite this, the disagreement between religious groups and secular groups over the court in which the accused girl will be tried is so great that a third group emerged from both of them. This third new group called itself the Independents. Independents saw half the truth in both groups. They argued that the issue was religious as well as criminal. The Independents suggested that Intisar's case be heard by 2 judges and joint jurors from the 2 courts. However, the panel of lawyers and judges strongly rejected these views on the grounds that such a combination could lead to a serious problem and complicate an already complex case. In order to reach a just solution, the dispute was referred to the Sharia court, the criminal court, the Supreme Court, the Ministry of Religious Affairs, and the Ministry of Justice and Equality. Representatives of those official governmental bodies met, and a decision was reached by a majority vote. The new resolution rejected all of the above opinions. That the trial of the suspected girl before the Sharia court alone is a wrong decision. That the accused girl be tried before the criminal court only is an incorrect decision. The guilty girl being examined together by a mixture of a religious judge and a secular judge is an impractical and absurd decision. Accordingly, the serious charges against the disobedient Muslim wife fleeing from the verdict of obedience and who was recently arrested while trying to escape outside the country were divided equally into religious crimes and criminal cases, and each court was granted half a share. This solution was accepted by all the conflicting parties, and thus the complex issue was settled. The suspected girl, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, must appear before 2 courts, 2 judges, and 2 juries. 2 hearings have been scheduled. First, she has to appear before the magistrate and jury of the criminal court. After that, she must stand before the heavenly judiciary of the Sharia court. When they made this fair decision, the dates, places, and timing of the 2 trials were published in all local newspapers, TV channels, and radio stations in the country. It has also been announced by Arab TV and radio channels in the Middle East and North Africa, and all other social media avenues posted them on the internet several times. The Sudanese government has encouraged all good citizens to attend these 2 historic trials. Once the above dispute was settled, another serious problem arose. It was established by the Mufti of all Muslim homes in the Democratic Republic of Sudan. The virtuous Mufti felt ignored because he was not consulted on such serious mundane and religious issues. Even worse, he had not even been invited to the meeting of these important government representatives at their previous meeting. Being the highest religious authority in the country, His Excellency thought his advice should be sought. He also argued that instead of resolving the dispute by majority vote, a system alien to Islam and borrowed from the infidel Western secular system, was supposed to be decided through a fatwa. According to him, the matter was to be resolved in one inspired word of God uttered through his holy tongue. So, the Mufti made a big fuss. Such noise may complicate the problem, cast doubt on the new solution, and eventually lead to serious division. However, His Highness, the virtuous man of Allah, was appeased and pacified by a visit by these important representatives. They begged His Majesty's forgiveness, and through that, they asked for his pardon, satisfaction, and blessings. An entire day's television program showed how important government representatives humiliated themselves before the virtuous Mufti and asked for his pardon. Many of them, especially the religious, fell at his holy feet and kissed him. Some secular people preferred to kiss his sacred hands instead of his righteous feet. At the end of the program, the virtuous Mufti gave a very long religious speech. The main theme of the sermon is to warn the Islamic nation of the danger of Western secularism and the hateful slavery of apostasy. According to him, the presence of two courts, the Sharia court and the secular court in a Muslim country in itself, indicates the influence of the West on Sudan. He hoped that there would come a time when there would be only one court in Sudan, and that court would be the court of God and his noble prophet, the Sharia court. At the end of his speech, the virtuous Mufti attacked the Christian religion and its unbelieving Christian followers, who are the enemies of God Almighty and his beloved messenger, Muhammad. For an unknown reason, His Eminence, the Mufti, also attacked the Jews, describing them as damned, brothers of apes and pigs. He even called America the Great Satan and the imperialist country and Israel the Zionist state that the Jews established in the land of the Arabs. He concluded his sermon by saying, "Woe to those who brainwashed the apostate Muslim girl Intisar and converted her to their corrupt and false Christian religion. Woe to the priest who made a marriage contract with her Christian lover, Sammy, as a Christian girl, despite knowing that she married a Muslim man, Hassan. And woe to those who gave her travel documents and tried to help her escape from her homeland and go and live in the land of the cursed infidels in Canada." The Muslim religious fanatics who listened and believed the fiery speech of the Grand Mufti of Sudan immediately put it into practice. They randomly picked up a large Catholic church and burned it down. Fortunately, that day was not a Sunday, when usually a large number of people gather to pray inside the church, and thus few injuries occurred and some human lives were lost. Some Christian girls of South Sudan and the Nuba Mountains were subjected to gang rape by Muslim men in the streets of Khartoum City in broad daylight. The reaction of some Muslim religious fundamentalists to the inflammatory and provocative preaching was also extreme. They demanded the immediate closure of the United Nations office, the Red Cross office, the Human Rights Watch office, the NGOs, and all Western diplomatic missions in Sudan. Those concerned foreign offices that provided the apostate Muslim girl Intisar with her immigration documents and free travel air ticket justified their actions by saying that they acted under deception and therefore should not be held responsible for any activity illegal or criminal in nature undertaken by the detained female suspect. This justification was accepted by Muslim fundamentalists under one condition. The girl's suspected lover, Sammy, who has fled to Canada, must be returned to his native country Sudan to stand trial for apostasy, adultery, deceit, forgery, and high treason. But the Canadian government ignored this request on the grounds that apostasy from Islam, conversion to another religion, and sex between lovers are not crimes punishable by law in a secular, Christian-majority country like Canada. With regard to obtaining travel documents by deception and forgery, it is a common practice among persecuted immigrants fleeing third world countries, and therefore these two charges, according to Canadian secular law, are also unfounded and not criminal in nature. From time to time, thousands of illegal immigrants flee from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, smuggling themselves with their women and children across the Mediterranean Sea, and entering European shores without official travel papers. The Muslim Brotherhood and their female counterparts of the Khansa Muslim Sisters called on the Sudanese government to reward the honest police inspector Abd al-Sadr Abd al-Ghaffar, who arrested the damned apostate Muslim girl Intisar at the only international airport in Sudan for his good work. The honorable title should be given to the righteous son of Sudan. This title is more honored and respected in a Muslim country than a person who has won the Nobel Peace Prize. However, their demand was not met by the government for many reasons. The most important of these reasons is that the International Airport Security Police inspector who arrested the disobedient, apostate Muslim wife who escaped from the verdict of obedience is not a man of prayer, but rather he drinks alcohol and smokes cigarettes, banjo, and shisha, and does not come to the mosque to perform the 5 daily prayers except the compulsory public prayer on Friday. Moreover, he is accused of being a secret member of the Sudanese Communist Party, whose members do not believe in the existence of God and consider the Holy Quran not to have been revealed from heaven, but to have been written by the Prophet Muhammad. Anyway, on that fateful second day, after the harsh female interrogators extracted the supposed truth from the apostate Muslim woman, the adulteress, and the disobedient wife who fled from her Muslim husband, Hassan, and the rule of obedience, Intisar, using on her their cruel and inhumane harsh methods, her half-dead body was transferred to a female doctor in the women's prison clinic for a medical examination. A corrupt female doctor declared her fit for prison without examining her badly battered body. From there, the female police guards carried Intisar's lifeless body and dumped it in the barracks of the women's prison in Khobar. It was at 9:45 p.m. when the body of the suspected girl was dumped inside Barak number 19. It is another Barak inhabited by Muslim goblins in Khartoum, just like the demons of Koko Wad al-Shaitan or the son of Iblis and his gang members in the Gaddarf city prison. The other inmates had already eaten their last meal for the day. The lights were turned off as soon as Intisar's body was brought in. The barracks turned into another large dark tomb, and the women prisoners were buried collectively in a bottomless pit. The new female inmate remained lying on her back without turning right or left. Her body is very weak and damaged. Her strength was completely exhausted due to the harsh beatings by the female detectives. She has no ability to move her severely damaged body. She feels dizzy, nauseous, and her body is feverish. My ears hear the voices of the female prisoner screaming, laughing, crying, and talking. This noise is as if it's coming from the underworld. Her nose helped her to tell that there was no ventilation in the crowded barack. She felt as if she had either been thrown into a filthy public toilet or been turned into a fetid cesspool by women residents. She can hear the voices of all animals. Some women bark, some roar, some howl, and some groan. Other detained women whistled, others sang, and others recited aloud Quranic verses and performed night prayers. While this infernal atmosphere continued, Intisar was hit on her face with 3 shoes, and some unknown hard objects hit other parts of her semi-naked body. The confused atmosphere led her to believe that she had been thrown into either the Taha Bashar Hospital for mad people or the Al-Tijani Al-Mahi Sanitarium for mental illness. Then Intisar heard a heavy knock on the iron door. She guessed that the knocker was one of the prison guards. She's right in her guess because the inmates in the endless hole have yelled so many threats and dirty words like "Get out of here, you fucking guard woman," and "Dirty street bitch, come inside," and "We'll fuck your big ass with a stick," and "Fuck your mom's pussy too." All of these inmates are female suspects and prisoners. Thus, the so-called detained disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jaber, began her second night in one of the Sudanese women's detention centers in Khartoum City. Chapter 79. The Islamic marriage contract is incomplete. The story of Intisar is similar to the classic tale The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. The old man caught a huge fish and stayed all night in the sea fighting with sharks to keep his big fish safe and sound. The clever fisherman thought that he would sell it for a large sum of money and make a good profit. When the morning came and the day began, the old man had come ashore with only a skeleton. Killer sharks ate the flesh of his large fish and left him with the skeletal remains. He could not sell it or dispose of it. He should cry over it and bury it somewhere. Likewise, Intisar, she became subject to attack by deadly human sharks from the time she escaped from her family's home in Gaddarf city due to the fear of being caught by the policemen and sent to the house of obedience of her so-called lawful Muslim husband. Then she traveled by truck at night and came to the capital of Sudan. She was constantly attacked by human sharks until she was finally caught at their international airport in Khartoum while she was trying to escape from their hell, which is correctly called the Democratic Republic of Satan. This is what they call euphemistically and in a less aggressive way the Democratic Muslim country of Sudan. I think it is an oxymoron sentence or contradictory phrase to call a Muslim country a democratic country. Now human sharks have only a skeleton left to be convicted of apostasy and sentenced to death, and then hanged on the gallows or allowed to be stoned to death by Muslim men on Friday afternoon for committing adultery with her lover Sammy while she was supposed to be a chaste wife to her Muslim husband Hassan. Then they could burn her remains to ashes or bury her in a grave, as they did to her underage innocent late sister Firdaus. Howbeit, in case of intisar, their Islamic law does not permit the burial of the body of an executed apostate. In the meantime, the accused girl of apostasy, adultery, and high treason is looking forward to her execution as a great savior for her from the suffering that torments her body and mind day and night. She concluded that no more evil could befall her than the evil she had already suffered in prison. She thought that death would be a mercy and blessing for her, and not an unbearable torment and curse. However, the apostate Muslim wife who became the Christian bride intisar is wrong in her conclusion and expectation of judgment and conviction for apostasy, adultery, and speedy execution because she does not know the serious problem that her religious cause has caused in all parts of her motherland, Sudan. The problem started as an innocent altercation between some classmates at a high school for boys in Khartoum City. The problem would never have arisen if this argument had not occurred. It started as a friendly discussion between students of the same class who follow two different religions, Islam and Christianity. Such an innocent discussion turned into a religious debate. The controversy led to a fight between these Muslim students and the Christian boys. That fight became a police case. When it came to the police, an intrusive journalist poked his nose into it and published it in one of the capital's most popular newspapers. It didn't end there. It was also published by other newspapers in many cities in the country. Then the problem became like a deadly epidemic or coronavirus spreading like wildfire every second and every minute across the country. It spread through word of mouth, phone calls, text messages, faxes, and emails, and through Facebook, Messenger, Twitter, Viber, WhatsApp, Google, YouTube, TikTok, Paltalk and Clubhouse, chat rooms, TV channels, radio stations, and other online social media. Muslims discuss it with people in their homes, students in their schools and universities, worshippers in God's houses known as mosques, and Christian believers in their prayer sanctuaries within the body of Christ, which is called churches. It was discussed by citizens, foreigners, and refugees in markets, sports fields, nightclubs, brothels, taverns, refugee camps, and many other places for social gatherings such as weddings, circumcision of male children, purification of the private parts of small girls, which is known worldwide as female genital mutilation, places of funerals, funeral processions, restaurants, popular food shacks, and so on. Then the difficult problem traveled at the speed of light and crossed the Sudanese borders and spread to all African and Arab countries. After that, it spread at the speed of the sound over large areas through satellite channels and the internet all over the world. It has become a heated discussion in every nook and cranny of every city in Sudan. Families discussed it in their homes. Then it crept into mosques and churches. In a short time, it became a serious problem between Muslims and Christians in Sudan. In cities where religious fanaticism is strong, it has led to riots and fights between men and women, old men and aged women. Many people were severely beaten and some seriously injured. Nevertheless, deaths according to police authorities are minimal. There is an official police report that 200 people were killed in the capital city alone. Some Christians were attacked in their homes and their wives, mothers, daughters, and sisters were gang-raped before their very eyes. Therefore, senior government officials anticipated the seriousness of such a problem if left unchecked for too long. Accordingly, they saw the urgent need to solve it. That is why the matter was immediately referred to the virtuous mufti of all Muslim houses in Satan's Democratic Republic. The Christian citizens of Sudan felt bad when they learned that the solution was sought only by a Muslim religious authority. In the opinion of Christians, why not consult the Pope of the Vatican in Rome or the Pope of the Copts in Alexandria in resolving such a serious religious issue? Despite their public protest and justified religious objection, senior Muslim officials in the Sudanese government ignored the objections of what the Quran calls the misled Christian infidels who worship Christ Jesus, the Son of the Virgin Mary. They are deliberately left it up to the Mufti of the Muslim lands to give his wise religious advice and holy fatwa and to tackle the baffling problem once and for all. Before we find out how His Majesty peeled the onion and dealt with the complex problem and supposedly sank his holy teeth into it and solved it, let us first make it clear and properly diagnose it. To trace the problem from its roots, it started as a concept and turned into a reality. The problem started when some Muslim and Christian students who are classmates in the same high secondary school for boys asked, does the accused apostate Muslim girl Intisar who converted to Christianity and became an infidel Nazrania woman can be considered a wife of two men or not? These classmates are 3 Muslim boys and 2 Christian lads. According to the 2 Christian students, the apostate Muslima woman Intisar, who became a Christian girl, should be considered the wife of a Muslim husband and another Christian husband, Hassan and Sami. As for the Muslim lads, they believe that she has one legal husband, and that man is Hassan Majub al-Hilali. They argued that her relationship with the apostate Muslim boy Sami Osman al-Tayyib, who became an infidel Christian man, was adultery. The problem would have ended there. In fact, the entire Muslim community in Sudan shares the opinion of Muslim students. Based on this opinion, the Sharia court will judge and convict Intisar as an adulterous wife. If this is the widely accepted view of the Muslim community, then where's the problem? Well, it wouldn't have been a problem if it weren't for a Christian boy who turned out to be a student of genius in religious matters. With his extraordinary intelligence, he found a loophole in the definition of marriage in Islam. The Quran never uses the word marriage, but it always uses the term nikah. In Surat Al-Nisa 4 verse 3 it says, "And if you fear that you will not deal justly with orphans, so ankahu as many women as are pleasing to you." 2, 3, and 4, "And if you fear that you will not be just, then one woman or what your right hand possesses." However, this verse has been translated in English as, "And if you fear that you will not deal fairly with orphan girls, then marry those women whose beauty pleases you." 2, 3, or 4. Therefore, the word nikah in the Arabic language is incorrectly translated as marrying women whose beauty pleases you, 1, 2, 3, or 4. But in order to be more accurate and truthful in translating the verse, we have to close our ears and then say quietly, "Fuck women who please you." You can use your dick to fuck one woman's pussy. You can use your cock to fuck at the same time 2 women's camels. You can use your phallus to fuck the private parts of 3 women at a time. And you can use your dick for fucking the pussies of 4 women together, but you are not allowed to sleep with more than 4 women at one time, and yet you may fuck any number of your Jaria women or your slave girls without the need to marry them. This explanation may seem vulgar and many people, especially Muslims, may not like it, but this is exactly what the verse of the Holy Quran conveys. The Quran never mentions the word marriage, but it always talks about fucking the woman's pussy by the man's dick, whenever it refers to sexual relations between men and women, which is usually criminalized by Sharia law if it occurs outside the Islamic marriage bond. According to the shrewd Christian student, how can Nikah Hassan's relationship with Intisar be called marriage when the two have not had sex with each other until today? The Christian boy's argument is a conceptual one, and so he is absolutely correct in his conclusion. The Prophet Muhammad once refused to allow a married man to divorce his wife and ordered him to have sex with her even once. He said to him, "You must taste her honey, and she must taste yours." In other words, you must insert your dick into her pussy and fuck her until she is sexually satisfied, and your semen will fly into her womb. That is why Islam calls fornication in marriage the ajad al-nikah, or the sexual intercourse contract. The Muslim boys tried to silence the Christian boy by saying that every marriage contract would eventually lead to sexual intercourse between husband and wife. And the Christian boy stressed his point of view by saying that this intercourse did not happen, and perhaps it will not happen, for there is now an impassable gulf separating Intisar and Hassan. That is why the Christian boy said Hassan cannot be considered a legal husband to Intisar unless you guys have to go against the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad and change your concept of marriage and accept our Christian definition of the sacred bond between husband and wife. In this way, you should only acknowledge the Christian marriage between Sammy and Intisar because the two had intercourse several times during their honeymoon at the hotel. When the genius Christian student could not be silenced by arguments of speech, Muslim lads began to accuse him of mocking their holy Quran and ridiculing their infallible Prophet Muhammad. After they were unable to silence the stubborn infidel Christian boy, the Muslim boys used their hands and killed him. When the police and the media announced the killing of the intelligent Christian student, the problem became a national and global issue, a difficult and intractable issue that everyone could not understand and could never be solved. It has become a problem for 45 million Sudanese. In schools, colleges, offices, homes, clubs, mosques, churches, buses, trains, sports stadiums, nightclubs, bars, and brothels, the problem has been hotly debated constantly day and night. The main question is, can Hassan be considered the legal Muslim husband of Intisar? Some said yes, some said no, and others said we don't know. Those who said they did not know are the majority. Accordingly, there is a division among the people again. Priests, pastors, laity, feminists, atheists, communists, and all Christians of Sudan, Egypt, and Lebanon and other Arab and African countries accepted the opinion that Hassan Majub al-Hilali could not be considered the legal husband of Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. Islamic imams, Maulanas, sheikhs, mazuns, muftis, terrorists, religious scholars of Al-Azhar Al-Sharif University in Cairo City, and other Muslims all over North Africa and the Middle East are divided and fragmented into many groups. We will ignore the many small groups with either silly opinions or hard-to-understand views and focus on just three. The first group argued that Hassan is a legitimate Muslim husband to the dissident Muslim wife who is fleeing from the verdict of obedience and who has been arrested as an apostate, Intisar. The second group confirmed that he could not be considered a legal spouse. The third group believed that the Islamic lawful marriage contract between Hassan and Intisar was incomplete. When this question became a big problem and another intractable worldly issue and led to a division in Sudanese society and resulted in a lot of bloodshed, the senior officials of the government took the matter seriously and then referred it to the Grand Mufti of all the homes of Muslims in the country. This time, of course, they avoided their first mistake and then included the greatest Islamic religious body and the greatest man of God called His Holiness the Grand Mufti in this sensitive religious issue. And why did the virtuous Mufti of all the Muhammadan houses in the Islamic kingdom of Tartus lock himself up in his private chamber for 7 days and 7 nights? During that long period, he researched in many religious books that are called the mothers of Islamic books. He read the Holy Quran again from cover to cover, although he knew it by heart. He also examined the volumes of Islamic traditions, the 4 rightly guided caliphs, the 4 famous imams, who were the founders of the 4 schools of Sharia, Malik, Abu Hanifa, Ibn Hanbal, Al-Shafi'i, and all the other mothers of Islamic books, and many other writings of Muslim scholars throughout of the 14 centuries. Rather, he consulted the writings of the greatest Muslim scholar who is second to none in his knowledge of Islam except the Prophet Muhammad, who is called Al-Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, also nicknamed as the Hujjat al-Islam and the defender of the Islamic religion. There's a rumor spreading like fire in Christian circles, but we cannot confirm it during those 7 days of intense research. His Highness departed from the path of his predecessors and searched in the Jewish and Christian holy books that are known among Muslims as the Torah of Moses, the Psalms of David, and the Gospel of Jesus. In all those religious books and great minds, he could not find an answer to this difficult question that baffled all people, men, women, and old folks, Muslims, Christians, or secularists, or non-worldly alike. Nevertheless, the Mufti emerged from his long research seclusion and honestly admitted to the public that he could not find an answer to the baffling question. But he said that as the highest religious authority in the country and the sole Mufti of all Islamic homes in Sudan, he should issue his own religious fatwa or decree. In his fatwa, which he claimed was inspired by God Almighty, the virtuous Mufti refused to say that the Islamic marriage contract is not legal, and also exposed and rejected the opposite opinion that claimed the legality of marriage between Hassan and Intisar. He said that these two views are extremist and are not supported by any Islamic religious references at all. Then His Eminence agreed with the third, saying that the Islamic marriage contract is incomplete. The marriage contract will remain incomplete until Hassan and Intisar have sex together. Thus, the husband must taste the honey of Intisar, and the wife should taste the sweetness of Hassan. Simply put, the Mufti ordered in his fatwa that the Muslim husband, Hassan, must fuck by his dick the pussy of his disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, who is imprisoned in the women's jail, or rather rape her, even once in her life. By hook or by crook, he must insert his cock into her pussy and fuck her until he is sexually satisfied and his semen flies into her womb container, even once. His fatwa indicates that any possible legal means should be taken by law enforcement officers to achieve this goal and the necessary Islamic religious requirement. If this basic and inevitable condition is fulfilled, the goodwill of the legitimate Muslim husband of the Nashis or disobedient Muslim wife must be considered complete, and their relationship is halal Islamic marriage in the Sharia of Allah and His Prophet. Thus, the virtuous Mufti ordered, through his fatwa, to give the deficient Muslim husband his lawful wife in order to complete his incomplete marriage contract with her and legalize her pussy legally. The period for consummating the marriage should not exceed 3 days. After that, the apostate Muslim girl must appear before the two courts for her prosecution, the Sharia court and the criminal court. At the end of his fatwa, the virtuous Mufti blamed himself and all the religious scholars in the country because none of them noticed or discovered such a religious error. In conclusion, he said that God Almighty used an infidel Christian boy to disgrace the Muslims, their scholars, and their nation to awaken them from their delusion that they can live in peace side by side with their Christian enemies who are infidels according to the Holy Quran. The Mufti added that Islam considers Jews and Christians to be cursed infidels and enemies of God, His beloved Prophet Muhammad, and Muslims, and for this reason they are called together brothers of apes and pigs and worshippers of Al-Tagut, who is Satan the devil. Chapter 80. A required bloody fight between the groom and the bride on their first wedding night. There is a strange, odd, and evil custom in Sudan that involves a bride and a groom on their first wedding night. It is generally practiced by Sudanese Muslims. I have no idea if other Muslims practice it or not. The custom dictates that every new bride must resist her groom because of her virginity and take pains not to allow him to have sex with her until he does so by force, a form of permissible rape in that society. The custom requires that the groom try by all means at his disposal to force his bride to submit to his sexual desire. As a result, on the first wedding night, a fight and conflict breaks out between the groom and the bride in the sleeping room. Generally, in the middle of the night some women will take the bride to a hut called al-Qatiya, or a small room where her groom is waiting impatiently for her coming while his cock is erect and standing like a Ramadan cannon to deflower her virgin pussy. After bringing the Muslim bride to her legal groom's room, the women must close the door from the outside and leave. As soon as the bridegroom is sure that the door is closed tightly and all the windows are closed likewise, he will attack her. Then the bride will start running in circles inside the little room and screaming as loud as she can. It is clear that the groom knows that no one will respond to her cries for help from him because he is her legal Muslim husband and according to divine Islamic law has the absolute right to her body. He will start chasing her around the room like a rooster chases his hen or a dog his bitch. She will jump on the bed and he will jump after her. She'll jump off the bed and he'll follow her like two speeding cars in Formula One race. The virgin bride may stumble on a chair or a table and fall to the ground, but she will get up quickly and resume running and screaming. This is expected of her. She knows neither her father nor her mother nor any of her brothers will come to save her. Her groom knows that he is allowed to fuck her pussy with his phallus and take her virginity in her home with the full knowledge of all her family members. If he failed to fuck her cunt and steal her virginity, he would be considered a homosexual or an impotent man. So, his big, fully erect cock must be crammed into her small, circumcised, sewn, and tightly closed pussy by hook or by crook. Then he must ejaculate his semen inside her small pussy until it reaches her uterus and breaks her egg and makes her pregnant, and this must be done on their first wedding night. This is the only rape in the Muslim community that does not lead to honor killing for either the rapist or his raped female victim. When the groom succeeds in catching his bride, then the real fight begins. It will not be a small battle, but a real fight in which each of them will apply their masculine strength and feminine ability. The bride will fight with her hands, feet, and teeth. She will scratch, kick, hit, and bite her groom's body. The groom's job will be much more difficult than his bride's. In addition to defending himself, he is supposed to take off her wedding dress. He has to rip her clothes off her body so that her bra and underwear are gone and she is completely naked. Although he may succeed in stripping her completely, he still has to face the difficulty of forcing her to submit to his sexual desire. Meanwhile, the bride will continue to scream and fight and defend her virginity until her last soldier is killed. It is conceivable that the groom would force his bride to abandon her struggles and surrender to his masculine physical superiority, which is naturally stronger to her feminine capacity. But he will still face another obstacle. To understand this last difficulty, we need to talk briefly about the ritual purification of the private parts of Muslim girls known as female genital mutilation or FGM. It is also known as female circumcision or cutting. It involves the removal of the seal of the labia majora and labia minora together after the entire clitoris has been removed. When a Muslim girl undergoes female genital mutilation, she will become abnormal. Her genitals will be completely mutilated and destroyed. Her vagina will be so tight or closed that it will be turned into a small hole, allowing her to urinate only. The woman who performs the circumcision, which is called circumciser, uses a razor, a sharp kitchen knife, or scissors to cut off the clitoris and remove it completely. At the same time, she will cut the labia majora and labia minora and then seal them together, leaving only a small hole. She will use a small reed, ostrich feather, or hedgehog thorn to measure the opening that should be left open after the circumcision is performed. The feather is as small as a straw that a person uses to suck on a soft drink. Most Muslim girls are usually circumcised when they are as young as 4 or 5 years old. Muslims believe that when a circumcised girl reaches adolescence, she will not be able to have sex with a man's phallus even if she wanted to do so. Any circumcised Muslim girl who tries to indulge in sex in her small and tightly closed pussy with some man's erect cock will suffer unbearable pain and feel as if she is being brutally raped. This is the main reason for this barbaric measure to prevent her from having sex before marriage. The Prophet Muhammad said in one of his authentic hadiths that circumcision is a sunnah for men and a preservation of honor for women. Therefore, the alleged prophet of God believed that a circumcised Muslim girl would protect her honor and that of her family by not indulging in premarital or extramarital sex or adultery. Accordingly, female circumcision or female genital mutilation aims to control the sexual life of the Muslim girl and eliminate her desire for the opposite sex. In this line of reactionary religious thinking, there is a belief among Muslims that an uncircumcised infidel girl can easily give in to her sexual desire. Even if her little underwear rubs or scratches her genitals, she will feel an uncontrollable sexual desire, and nothing will reduce her desire to masturbate or fornicate. According to them, this is simply not the case for a circumcised Muslim girl. She is always in control of her sexuality, and it is very difficult to get her aroused sexually. Even if she watches a hot porn movie on the internet, she will not develop sexual desire for the horny man she watches fucking the white pussy of his infidel naked partner. During her haram viewing, the circumcised Muslim girl will not even feel the need to masturbate. Moreover, they believe that because of the small hole created in her sewn pussy after circumcision, a Muslim girl is always considered a virgin. Therefore, Muslim men believe that a genitally mutilated Muslim girl is more sexually pleasurable than an uncircumcised infidel girl. Here, I would like to mention what the drunk night counselor, Sharaf al-Din Wad Mizmar al-Agabash said that night to his Muslim friend, Sammy, about the difference between the pussy of an uncircumcised Christian infidel girl and the camel of a circumcised Muslim girl. This advice was given by the former to the latter because the Muslim boy, Sammy, told him that he had fallen in love with a Christian girl named Intisar and wanted to marry her, but his wealthy father stood against his rich son's love affair with a poor girl. This advice is given in the brothel and tavern of the ugly prostitute, Kultumia, who is the biological mother of the imprisoned gang leader Abu Shakura Wad al-Kalb. The night counselor, Wad Mizmar, said to his Muslim friend Sammy, "Why do you want to leave our circumcised Muslim girls and go to uncircumcised Christian infidel girls? Our circumcised Muslim girl has a small, purified, sewn, and closed pussy, so she is very pleasant to have sex on the bed, while the uncircumcised Christian girl has a large, open, uncircumcised pussy, and thus can be fucked by the hand or the leg of the man who wants to sleep with her." And Dr. Mizmar continues to compare his sexual adventures with the Muslima woman and Christian girl. "I have had sex with many women, and I know the difference between the two types of women. If you don't believe me, Mr. Sammy, I'm willing to take you now to another brothel near the airport and let you have sex with an uncircumcised Ethiopian Christian girl, and then you can have sex with a circumcised Eritrean Muslim girl. I swear by God and our Holy Quran, you will know the difference between the two women." So, his advice revealed that Muslim men believe that having sex with a Muslim virgin bride with mutilated pussy is more enjoyable than having sex with an uncircumcised Christian virgin bride. However, the university graduate student Sammy told him in practice that the circumcised Muslim girl had a dead pussy and therefore sex for her was real torture and intolerable rape. Because she does not have a clitoris, she cannot feel sexual pleasure and does not reach an orgasm, which is the height of women's sexual pleasure. Whereas, the infidel Christian girl who is uncircumcised has a clitoris and thus enjoys sex and causes the enjoyment of her sexual partner in bed. In any case, through this primitive and barbaric procedure of FGM, the vagina of the Muslim girl will be closed and narrowed until it turns into a small hole that allows the girl to urinate only. The hole will be slightly larger than the eye of the needle. Intercourse with her will be simply impossible. It's like locking up a girl's pussy or putting a secure padlock on her genitals. Pre-Islamic Arabs used to design underwear made of iron and put it around the private parts of their women. The iron underwear was called the belt of chastity. When their women were captured, their captors might not be able to rape them. The same primitive idea was passed on to Muslims and is practiced today in an even more sinister way through female genital mutilation. Instead of putting on those iron panties and locking them, in Islam, padlocks are put on the Muslim girls' vaginas. Moreover, in Islam, by removing a girl's clitoris, labia majora and labia minora, her sexual organ will be destroyed and mutilated to the point where she will lose all desire for sex. She does not enjoy a clitoral orgasm or any other type of orgasm because large parts of her genitals have already been removed and the remaining parts of her sutured pussy are mutilated and numb. Therefore, having sex with a genitally mutilated Muslim girl is a painful experience because she cannot enjoy it. It harms her more than gives her sexual pleasure. The circumcised bride also feels unbearable pain when she has sex with her groom. Some experts in the field believe that FGM is like passing a death sentence on a circumcised girl's vagina. Some Muslims argue that those genitals that a circumciser or midwife removes during circumcision will grow back. This is an incorrect claim. The clitoris and two labias will never grow again. Once removed, they are gone forever. Therefore, female circumcision or female genital mutilation is evil, inhumane, primitive, barbaric, and harmful to women. It is the most harmful practice of misogyny in Islam, invented by man against woman in order to control her sexuality. Accordingly, on her first wedding night, the circumcised Muslim bride will feel terrible pain in her sewn and tight pussy, as if her groom raped her with his erect penis. It's like slitting her through her genitals or sawing her in half. In many cases, grooms could not penetrate fully stitched virgin vaginas until their brides were taken to hospitals and had their genitals enlarged through major surgeries. In fact, the hole that is left open in her pussy will not allow the groom to get into her tightly closed pussy, even his little finger. A man's fully erect phallus would be too big to pass through this small opening. Each of these brides needs to undergo surgery to enlarge her sutured pussy so that the groom can have normal sex with her with his big dick. Sometimes the fear of being considered impotent or homosexuals may prompt men who are grooms to try everything to penetrate the virginal extremities of their circumcised brides. There have been cases where the groom used a knife or scissors to widen the small opening for the pussy of his circumcised bride. Before we disentangle the morals behind this evil sex habit, we must explore its dire consequences. In many cases, the wedding night of the honeymoon ended with hospitalization with serious injuries not only to the bride, but also to the groom. Sometimes the bride may be in good health and physically stronger than her groom, who is thinner in body and therefore slender than her big body. Cases of brides breaking the arms, legs, ribs, or teeth of their grooms are not uncommon. In some rare cases, it was the groom who cried out for rescue. If there is no alleged social and religious morality behind the strange and sinister sexual custom, we may infer that it is derived from the example of wild beasts or domestic pets such as cats and dogs. Firstly, the resistance of the bride is supposed to prove to all that she was brought up so strictly and correctly that even her groom would not allow him to violate her and steal her virginity. In other words, there is no acceptable way to have sex with her other than with maximum force. Secondly, by shouting loudly, the bride will prove to her family, relatives, in-laws, neighbors, and girlfriends who hear her moaning on the first wedding night that she is a morally sound girl who abhors sex. Thirdly, she will prove to her bridegroom and all those present that she is indeed a virgin. This last claim would be verified by her mother and mother-in-law by examining the bloodstains on the white bed sheet the next morning. The bloodstains would be clear evidence that she was a virgin and that her hymen had only been broken at night by her groom when he inserted his phallus into her virgin pussy. Fourthly, through her screaming, yelling, roaring, wailing, and bewailing, she will announce how painful it feels to have sex for the first time because she is circumcised, sealed, and sewn into her pussy. And her tight little cunt has been compressed and securely closed since childhood. This is supposed to be the moral behind that vicious custom of rape of the bride by her groom on their first wedding night. However, in the case of the so-called lawful, disobedient runaway Muslim wife, Intisar, who was arrested by the airport police, and her alleged Muslim husband, Hassan, the issue of morality will not be raised. It will be a struggle and deadly fight between a legitimate rapist and a helpless imprisoned sex victim. Chapter 81. The police transfer the disobedient Muslim wife to her Muslim husband to complete their marriage. When the news of the completion of the imperfect marriage reached the ears of Intisar, it increased her misery and torment. She now sees every human around her as a fearsome creature, more dangerous to her than Satan. She knows every inmate in her barracks and every prison guard is her sworn enemy. Every human Muslim female around her hates her and harbors evil for her. Her female guards and all the prisoners are Muslims and hate her and look forward to her imminent execution. So, the fear of death haunts her like a terrifying ghost. Her throat dries up, her breath chokes, and terror fills her heart every time she thinks of being tried for apostasy and adultery and executed. At night, when she sleeps, she is constantly attacked by nightmares. Either she will be hanged on the gallows for her apostasy and conversion to Christianity, or she will be stoned to death for her adultery with her lover, Sami, by a group of Muslim men in front of the largest mosque in Khartoum City on a Friday afternoon. Intisar was often woken up in the middle of the night screaming loudly for help. She knows that she has already gone through the most excruciating experience of physical torture any human being can go through and not die during her brutal interrogation by the ruthless, hard-hearted female interrogators. Wherefore, her survival so far is more than a miracle. She hates the police female interrogators who subjected her to brutal beatings and the terrorist women inmates who tortured her because she is an apostate Muslim. She knows that this kind of torture can happen to any girl her age and place. However, the so-called disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, considered that her physical torture in prison was less evil than what she would face in the next 3 nights with her sworn enemy, her imperfect Muslim husband, Hassan. She and her lover, Sami, had already fought many battles against that rejected lover and selfish rival and his gang. Most of his gang members were arrested and thrown behind bars except for him. He is the last enemy left free and out of prison. Intisar lost her sister Firdos, her brother Osman, and her Christian husband, Sami. She landed in prison, tortured, and soon to be executed. She was separated from her soulmate and Christian husband Sami forever. She lost everything including her freedom, and soon she would lose her life. Only the selfish man Hassan remained free and safe in this deadly battle. When she foresaw her dark future and Hassan's future, Intisar decided that she would never let him touch her. She decides to fight him and keep him from raping her. If that wasn't enough, she was determined to even take revenge on him for the blood of her late sister Firdos, her suicidal brother Osman, her lover Sami, and even herself. She knew and understood that the only way to take revenge on him was to kill him. Intisar trembled when she thought of killing someone. She has never thought of killing a human being. Even those human beasts who tried to rape her, the fat man Bulbul and the lustful military major Alcinisni, she did not think of killing them, or even wished for their death. Nor did she even wish the death of the evil old man who kidnapped her sister, tied her up, imprisoned her, beat her, starved her, raped her, brutally killed her, and caused her brother's suicidal death. Moreover, she knows that she cannot kill a cat even if it threatens her life. Despite this, Intisar considered Hassan to be a different creature. He is the embodiment of evil and selfishness. He is the devil incarnate. He is a selfish stalker, a cowardly rival lover, and a very malicious man. He and his spies kept chasing and searching for her wherever she went. So, such a wicked person should never be allowed to live. He is fiercer than the vile old man Osman al-Tayyib and more insidious than her criminal half-brother Omar. Accordingly, the imprisoned Christian bride decided that she would not die until she first sent the selfish rival lover to his grave before she was tried and executed. Unless such an evil man is gone forever, she has decided she will not go to the gallows. Her lover Sami has flown to heaven, and her sworn enemy Hassan must go down to hell. Only then can she go to the gallows and be executed like the Christian girl Perpetua, who was murdered as the first female martyr in North Africa for Christ. Despite her anger and determination, Intisar knows that as a helpless apostate Muslim girl, and as an imprisoned Christian bride, she may not fulfill this desire to kill her enemy Hassan, and thus her determination and revenge die with her. She will be locked with him in one room, and as a man he will surely take advantage of his masculine superiority over her feminine capacity and rape her as a dog rapes its bitch on the street. He may rape her to death as the evil old man raped her late sister and killed her, and he remained alive, free, and not convicted of his heinous crimes and justified by the Khartoum North Criminal Court until today. Therefore, Intisar dropped the idea of killing Hassan. She thought only of handing over her body to him and letting him assault and rape her for 3 nights. At least, this may save her from the painful experience of fighting a selfish, evil, and dangerous lover who believes that he has a divine right granted to him by the Islamic Sharia court over her body and supported by his misogynistic religion Islam. Once again, the detained Christian bride Intisar rejected her second decision, and her confused mind thought of a third alternative. Instead of killing him or allowing him to rape her easily, she decided to make it difficult for him and prove to him that she hates him bitterly and loves Sami to the point of worship. She wants to fight against him and defend herself and her honor until he takes her with full force as a groom rapes his bride in Sudan. Even if he succeeds in forcing her to submit to him under his heavy body, she must bite him with her sharp teeth, spit on his despicable face, and pluck his curly hair from his head while he rapes her. Intisar is once again confused and does not understand what she can do when she is locked in the same room with her alleged imperfect Muslim husband, Hassan. Her mind kept going from one decision to the next without settling on any. She kept thinking about her problem until finally sleep took hold of her exhausted body and she fell asleep. That night, the detained so-called disobedient Muslim wife Intisar was visited, as usual, by many bad dreams and terrifying nightmares. In her first dream, she saw her half-brother Omar chasing her with a sword in his hand. She ran away from him until she reached the bank of the river Nile. When her feet reached the muddy water, she looked back and saw him running towards her, accompanied by many people. People carry swords, spears, sticks, whips, bricks, and stones. They are like the angry mob that chased her from the cemetery to the gate of the military base. She knew they were coming to kill her as a girl fleeing slaughter in an honor killing. She turned to the river again. She realized that she had no way to escape. Intisar was caught between the jaws of pliers. She fell to her knees and started crying. Her screams in the middle of the night woke up some of the female inmates of the barracks she was imprisoned in. Those angry suspects and prisoners scolded and cursed her with dirty language. Some angry criminal and terrorist women threatened to beat her to death if she got up and screamed like a madwoman again. To avoid being strangled to death, Intisar stayed awake for hours. Then she was overcome with drowsiness and fell asleep again. This time she saw in her dream a huge monster with many heads. She recognized all the heads as the heads of her evil enemies, her criminal half-brother Omar, the wealthy business tycoon Mr. Osman Al-Taib, the imam of the Grand Mosque in Gadaref City Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, the famous politician Mr. Majub Al-Hilali, and the notorious womanizer, the witch doctor Hajj Muhammad. The only missing head is that of her alleged legal incomplete Muslim husband head. Therefore, the detained Christian bride Intisar concluded that the monster himself was the rejected, selfish lover, Hassan. She tried to run away from the scary monster, but her legs didn't move. She found her hands chained and her legs stuck in the mud inside the riverbank. She tried to scream, but her mouth wouldn't open. When the monster approached her, she awoke from her nightmare. This time she decided to stay up for the rest of the night. Early in the morning, the imprisoned Christian bride was taken out of the goblin-infested barracks number 19 by the large police inspector, Sakina Khalifallah Abd al-Din, and the other two fat policewomen. She is now chained to the legs and hands. When they took her out, they pushed her into a police wagon and the car started to drive away from the prison. The detainee Intisar sits between Inspector Sakina and another large policewoman. They are all silent, as if they are in a funeral procession. Meanwhile, she wonders in her mind where they will take her so early in the day. Will they take her to her so-called deficient Muslim husband to complete his sham marriage to her and complete the definition of Islamic lawful marriage? Or are they plotting another evil? All the way she remained puzzled by these questions. After a long drive, the police wagon stopped at a beauty salon. She was then dragged and pulled from inside the vehicle by the policewoman Sakina. Intisar is still chained in legs and hands. Then the policewomen took her to the beauty salon. As soon as the ugly three large women who are in police khaki uniforms entered with the pretty female prisoner handcuffed and her legs tied, the receptionist girl responded with a loud shriek of terror. She has never seen a bride brought into the beauty salon like this. Her second reaction is to send them away. She thought they have mistaken the beauty parlor for the notorious Khobar Central Prison for women. The human elephant female, the fat police inspector, Sakina Khalifallah, Shaitan Aldin, screamed at her and demanded that her captive bride be prepared for her first wedding night as soon as possible. The receptionist tried to give some excuses like the place is fully booked and some beauticians are sick and absent. But policewoman Sakina said that this was a legal order and an urgent case. Even if some brides are sent back, their imprisoned bride must be ready for her wedding tonight with her groom. Then the receptionist tried her last excuse by saying that there is no advance reservation for the imprisoned bride, and that is why she must be brought in another day. This time, the huge inspector used her loaded rifle and legal power and police force and threatened the receptionist girl that if her imprisoned bride is not taken inside within a few minutes, she will not only close the beauty salon, but will also destroy the place and attack all the beauticians and arrest them along with all the brides. So, the receptionist had to acquiesce and let the imprisoned bride in. All the brides, fiancés, and other sweethearts sitting in the beauty parlor waiting their turn were so angry. However, they could not express their protest but whispered to each other their annoyances. They fear that their objection will lead to immediate arrest, indefinite imprisonment, or permanent damage to their faces. So instead of making them more beautiful girls, they will become scary ghosts or black burqa-clad Muslim young women. When the imprisoned Christian bride was asked to enter, the 3 policewomen followed her. The receptionist girl intercepted them due to a minor technical problem. She first asked them to remove the handcuffs from the hands and the shackles from the feet of the imprisoned bride. Secondly, she told them that only the detained bride is supposed to enter the beauty salon and they have to wait for her outside. But Police Inspector Sakina refused both requests. According to the order of the law, the imprisoned bride Intisar and her 3 female guards entered. As soon as those 3 dangerous policewomen in khaki entered the makeup room with the teenage girl handcuffed and legs bound, their sudden appearance caused some confusion. Most of the pretty young women sitting inside the beauty room thought that the policewomen were the police officers who stormed the place on the grounds that it was a brothel in disguise. Therefore, they started running helter-skelter and screaming. 3 frightened girlfriends jumped out of windows and fled, fearing arrest as high-ranking prostitutes. 4 beautiful brides fainted and fell unconscious on the hard floor of the salon, and 2 fiancés collapsed half dead in their chairs. The confused situation was brought under control when the receptionist damsel rushed inside and explained the strange and rare matter, thus clearing up the misunderstanding. Then the huge 3 policewomen were then shown big chairs and asked to occupy one corner of the spacious beauty room. When the imprisoned Christian bride, Intisar, sat in an armchair and saw her image in the large mirror in front of her, she was very dumbfounded. She couldn't believe that the scary face looking at her from the other side of the mirror was her own. The terrifying face stared at her with eyes full of fear, anger, bitterness, dread, panic, despair, suicidal, and hatred. It's as if the creepy face holds her responsible for everything that happened to it. It's a pale, discolored face. It's lifeless and terrified, like the face of a dying girl sitting on the hot chair to be electrocuted. Its eyes are whitened and red. They are surrounded by black circles. They appear to have not slept for days. Her cheeks are swollen due to slapping and continuous torture by harsh policewomen and repeated beatings by imprisoned bullies among the evil Muslim terrorists. It reveals deliberate starvation by the prison administration. Her hair is dirty and not combed like a crazy girl's hair. Her white teeth have turned yellow due to not using the brush, toothpaste, and toothpick for several days. Not only are they yellow, but they also give off bad breath. The Christian bride, who is in detention, has not been able to investigate whether there is anything in the filthy washroom in the dormitory to brush her teeth or comb her hair since the day she was arrested at the international airport and sent to the hellish Khobar women's prison. In short, Intisar now looks in the mirror at a ghost-like face staring at her. She could not believe that it was the same joyful, angelic face that everyone in the Coptic church loved and whose incomparable charm and beauty were praised by all. It could not be the same face of the beautiful beloved Intisar that her handsome lover, Sami, used to look at for hours and describe her wonderful beauty inch by inch. Her lips were now dry and lifeless. They couldn't be the same sweet lips that Sami loved to kiss and suck the honey nectar from her soft tongue. In fact, ever since she was arrested at the damned Khartoum International Airport, the beautiful and sexy girlfriend, Intisar, gradually began to die. She is like a fragrant rose plucked by a rough hand and dumped into a filthy dumpster or a stinking public toilet full of urine and feces. She is imprisoned in a squalid place with the most dangerous female suspects and convicts in Khartoum City. She is guarded by the most corrupt and ruthless female guards in the triangle capital city of Sudan. Among the inmates of her barracks are the most dangerous female Muslim terrorists in Sudan. These dangerous women covered her with their filth and their stench stained her. In a short time, her face dried up, died, and lost its beauty and fragrant scent. After that, she began to spread the stench of the infernal women's prison where she was imprisoned. When the girls of the beauty salon began working on her face, Intisar doubted that they could restore life and beauty to her dying face. With all their skills and long experience, can they bring the dead face back to life and restore beauty to it? Can they make a dead corpse walk again? She thinks of their failed attempts, as if they were preparing her dying body for its funeral and burial. Then the beauticians washed her face and combed her hair. They tried to cover up and hide her fear, suffering, torment, anger, bitterness, and hopelessness with their many colors from her dying face, but they failed miserably. They came out with a dead face filled with powder of different colors. They made her lifeless face look even more terrifying and ugly. Then they changed her shorts and a small t-shirt and instead wrapped Islamic hijab and abaya over her body. In that ugly and humiliating Islamic gown and veil, the beautiful Christian bride was transformed from a beauty queen into a languid zombie or a fearsome black ghost or spooky-looking Saudi Muslim woman in a black burqa clad. Just like a Western Christian girl who took off her sexy red bikini and became a Muslim girl, then donned the unsexy black Islamic swimsuit euphemistically called a burkini. When they took off her Christian clothes, the shirt and the shorts, and put the abaya, the Islamic veil, and the Sudanese sari over her, she became like the white angel of love who turned into the black demon of hate. The hideous-looking prostitute Kaltumia has now become Miss World of Hate or Queen of Ugliness. When all the funeral rites were performed on her body, the imprisoned bride was taken out of the beauty salon by the 3 female police guards. As soon as the police wagon started moving, Intisar felt her funeral procession begin. Every minute that passes brings her closer and closer to her grave. Her mind turned back to her sworn enemy Hassan. She began to imagine her mortal physical battle with him. She knows that her Islamic clothes tonight will be stained with her blood and his. She has renewed her resolve to kill him again. She resolved that he would not rape her unless she fell dead before him. She decided to die for her honor rather than allow that selfish, cowardly man to possess her sexy body and rape her pussy for 3 nights. After an hour of traveling in the police car, the funeral procession stopped near a large gate. The burial place where the carriage stopped appears to be in a nearby suburb on the outskirts of the capital city. When Intisar was pushed away by the elephantic female cop Sakina, could not see any other dwelling houses nearby. The place reminded her of the brothel house of the pimp lady, Mother Nafisa. The imprisoned Christian bride will not be surprised if she enters the house and finds that pimp woman and the fat rapist human beast who assaulted her during her sleep. This house is part of a large garden. Then she saw 2 policemen holding their submachine guns. With them, she saw 2 huge police dogs. Every dog is as big as a lion and can eat a horse. One of the policemen opened the door to the cemetery and let the undertakers in. The police inspector, Sakina Shaitan Allah Abd Aldin, grabbed her by the hand and started dragging her into the house. Intisar put up some resistance, but when the huge woman in khaki raised her large hand that looked like a cricket bat and slapped her face, she was forced to obey. She's like a little girl's bicycle among those 3 human trucks. Then they entered the compound of the house and proceeded to walk towards a room. Before they reached the room, Intisar suddenly spotted a group of people sitting in silence under the shade of a large Nima tree, which resembles the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. The detained Muslim wife immediately recognized some of their faces. Their faces scared her to death. She was paralyzed and her soul almost left her body. As a result, Intisar stopped moving automatically until the elephant policewoman pulled her and then pushed her forward. Although she resumed her walking, she did not feel her body move. When they approached those fearful faces, she turned her frightened face and looked at them. She saw her sworn enemy, Hassan Majub al-Hilali, surrounded by those demonic faces. He sits silently, dressed as a groom, waiting for his Muslim bride to complete his Islamic marriage with her. He is wearing a yellow Sudanese jalabiya and covers his big head with a long white turban. He resembles a Muslim terrorist and sitting on a prayer mat like his false prophet Muhammad, who authorized him to buy her from her half-brother Omar as a slave girl in Sugawokaz in Makkah City. On his left side sits the old serpent, the devil, the dragon, also known in human language as Osman al-Tayyib, and on his right side sits the monster, the Antichrist, the man of chaos, whom we can also call by the human name, the Imam Maulana Shaitan Marzouk. To this evil trinity there are their three spy demonic unclean spirits. She saw the dangerous ringleader Tia, the son of Coco, the firstborn of the devil, the big rat Geiger, and the ugly eagle Nisr. The imprisoned Christian bride started to shake like a reed when her eyes saw these dreadful villains gathered in this place, which was like a slaughterhouse prepared for her sexual slaughter. The Khartoum city police brought back their female victim, the fleeing prey, which had been snatched from their cannibal teeth and blood-stained hands, in the city of Gadaref. It's time for them to eat her raw flesh and chew her bones. The imprisoned Christian bride knew and understood that the evil old man Osman al-Tayyib would not allow her to return alive from whence she came. She expected that on the first night he would ask his servant Hassan to beat and rape her, and on the second night he would order his hypocritical religious leader, Maulana Sheikh Marzouk, to go to her and rape her too. And on the last night he would come himself, then beats her mercilessly and brutally rapes her to death, as he did to her late innocent sister Firdaus. He will take revenge on her for separating him from his son, Sami, and sending him behind bars. When she saw these bad guys with her alleged groom, Hassan, the bride, Intisar, concluded that her resolve to fight with him to protect her honor and not allow him to rape her or kill him in an honor killing had become an impossible task. She understood that she could not fight and win against 6 evil men. Hassan may come with 1 or 2 of these criminals and ask them to detain her inside a room and hold her for him until he finishes raping her. And she remembered that her late sister Firdaus mentioned in her love letter to her friend Scylla that the demonic old man had used another evil man to help him rape her. She thought that the big gang leader Tia might be that evil man who tied up her innocent underage sister and whipped her with his long whip and beat her with his big stick. He is the largest of the 6 and appears to be a dangerous criminal. The old man may have asked Hassan to use 2 or 3 of his thugs to help him during her rape. Therefore, the detained Christian bride Intisar lost all hope of winning any bloody and deadly battle over protecting her honor and virtue from her usurper. Her misfortune robbed her of the loving and caring Coptic Christian family and brought her to these wicked Muslims who kept chasing her everywhere she went until she finally became helpless prey in their hands. They can now do with her while her hands and feet are bound as they please. Her bad luck has made her changed hands from the holy people of Jehovah to the cursed worshippers of Allah, from the worshippers of the true God to the slaves of Satan, and from the most beloved of people in Khartoum city to the most dangerous villains in Sudan. Instead of flying to heaven with her lover and Christian husband, Sami, to the promised land, Canada, which flows with honey and money, her fate in life made her landed in the inferno, as she ended in the hellfire of her so-called legal husband, Hassan, in the Democratic Republic of Satan. When they passed these 6 bad guys and reached the room, the policewoman, Sakina Khalifallah Abd al-Shaitan, removed a key from her pocket and opened the handcuffs from the hands and feet of the so-called disobedient Muslim wife, the escapee from the verdict of obedience, Intisar. Then she pushed her into the room and closed the door of the house of obedience behind her. She locked her inside the small room as if she was a new Sudanese bride brought by the 3 women on her first wedding night, to wage a bloody and deadly battle with her groom over her virginity and honor until he ripped her clothes and raped her. Chapter 82. Applying the verdict of obedience to the disobedient Muslim wife. The house of obedience, where the so-called disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, who fled from the verdict of obedience and was arrested and imprisoned, has a small empty room with no furniture except for a large bed. There are no chairs, tables, sofas, or any other piece of furniture. When the policewoman pushed the Muslim bride inside, Intisar went and stood in one of the 4 corners of the small room. From where she stands, she can see the only door locked from the outside with a large padlock. All the windows are also shut by the police and secured from the outside. She stands like an innocent girl expecting an attack at any time from a treacherous enemy. She was disappointed with her expectations when she stood for so long and her enemy did not come to attack and rape her. She got so tired of being on her feet that she sat on the hard floor of her corner. She brought her legs to her chest and held them in her hands, hugging them tightly. She tries to protect her private parts from the impending rape. Her heart still feared that these 6 evil men would come and gang rape her. Intisar remembered seeing their evil faces one after another. Starting with the false religious leader who conspired with her criminal half-brother Omar and forced her into a halal Islamic marriage with the evil man Hassan. Imam Malana's face still bears the ugly scars caused by the severe beating of the enraged soldier, Abbas, who whipped him with his belt and trampled him under his heavy military boots when he found him in his bedroom with his cheating wife, Raja. His ugly, disfigured face looks like Dracula's masked face in a Hollywood horror movie. He wears a white pajama-like Sudanese jalabia and a large yellow turban on his big head. His big turban looks like the Kadmol turban of the Muslim notorious terrorists who are known as the Rapid Forces or Janjaweed. The imprisoned Christian bride saw on his forehead the Islamic prayer sign that resembles the sign of the beast 666 mentioned in the Book of Revelation in the Holy Bible. She also remembered the evil old man's face who appeared to her as the fearsome character, the hobbit Gollum that she saw in the movie The Lord of the Rings. The hunchbacked and lame, old man looked like a 3-foot-tall Asian man of about 90 years old. He stared at her angrily as his teeth chattered like ruminants and slammed against each other as if he were eating the raw human flesh of a dead human being. Although she had seen that scary hag face several times before, she had never seen him so angry as today. Intisar understood from his ugly upset face that he meant evil to her. She also remembered the other 3 hideous faces, but recognized 2 of them. She remembered that 2 of these 3 thugs had traveled with her and Lawyer Sulla in a truck when she disguised herself as a handsome boy and tried to flee to Kassala City and hide from the verdict of obedience and the policeman there. She has never seen the 3rd big man who looks like the twin brother of the ruthless police inspector Sakina Khalifallah Abdul Din who tortured her so cruelly and still frightens her with her everlasting sinister presence. Intisar believed that the grand spy Tia was the same vile servant who was hired by the evil old man to tie up, starve, rape, and beat to death her late innocent sister with his cane. So, she concludes that the old man had brought him there to do the same evil to her today when her alleged husband, Hassan, assaults and brutally rapes her. This realization scared her to death. She knew and understood that she could not fight with such an elephant man and win the battle of honor against her enemy. Hassan is a coward man who cannot face a young teenage girl alone. He brings his gangsters with him to help him win a fight against a defenseless, imprisoned girl. Despite this, Intisar renews her vow to fight against her sworn enemy, even if he and his evil 5 men try to gang rape her simultaneously with him. The gang rape reminded her of her friend, the first innocent girl, Mona, who was also subjected to gang rape by 6 men of the Al-Wash gang, including her criminal half-brother, Omar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir. What an unbearable, painful torment the first innocent girl, Mona, had gone through in the den of the brothel of the 6 gangsters. Intisar concludes that the same fate as her friend will be done to her tonight by those 6 evil men sitting outside the room. At least the 6 former gangsters were tried and convicted by the criminal court in Gadaref City, but in the case of the crime of raping her today, her rapist will be protected by Islamic law and assisted by the police in his evil deeds. After an exceedingly long wait, the imprisoned bride saw the door open. She immediately got to her feet and prepared herself for the fight. She saw instead of her alleged Muslim husband Hassan, an old man came in and seemed to walk towards her slowly while holding a tray of food in his hands. Then the elderly old man put the tray of food on the ground and left without saying a word. Intisar understood that they had brought her food to eat. Although hungry, she viewed their food as a deadly poison. She tends to eat food in order to maintain her strength and fight her archenemy, but she suspected that they might have put a hypnotic substance in the food. She knows that her father-in-law, Osman Shaitan al-Tayyib, is an evil genius, and he hired the old man and told him to put something narcotic in the food and bring it to her. So, Intisar resisted her temptation to eat and dropped the idea of eating. Although she was still starving, she preferred to remain hungry without eating any food. The so-called disobedient Muslim wife remained standing for a long time until she felt tired and sat down again in her corner. Many hours passed as she sat watching the door. She guessed that her alleged legal Muslim husband might try to attack her only when she was asleep. He is like the craned African hyena that only attacks its prey when it is asleep. She struggled with her sleep for a long time, until midnight, and then began to fall asleep without wanting to sleep. Eventually, the imprisoned Christian bride fell into a deep sleep and began to snore. Shortly after the helpless prey fell asleep, the door was opened and a black silhouette of a tall man entered. He walks slowly and carefully. It is like a thief who came at night to rob, kill, rape, and destroy. He is also like Satan incarnated into human form. He is careful not to wake his sleeping victim. He wants to attack and rape her while she is sleeping and not ready for his sexual assault. Yet his presence as an evil spirit caused the imprisoned bride to wake up from her sleep in a panic. She felt as if an unclean spirit was trying to enter and possess her body. When she opened her eyes in horror, she saw him standing as a demonic figure before her eyes. She did not see him as the meddlesome lover Hassan who was standing like a beggar near her school waiting for her to come out and beg her to accept his one-sided love. She turned down his courtship many times until she finally has to insult him and spit on his face in front of her female classmates. However, the cheap and selfish man continued to send his cousin Sasan. When Sasan continued to harass her by trying to convince her to accept the love and engagement of her cousin Hassan as a future husband and life partner, she kicked her out of her house and boycotted her. She is the same girl he has now married and kept in the hotel as his sex slave. Today, Intisar sees Hassan as Satan in human form. She immediately jumped to her feet and prepared herself to fight for her honor and virtue. Both hands with their fists raised in front of her to hit him on the face and the rest of his body. Her eyes narrowed and focused on his face as if she were a boxer ready to strike the fatal blow against her dangerous opponent. Her teeth are closed tightly and her lips open and close frequently. She is breathing loudly. When he saw her angry face, the cowardly man scared her. He understood that she would do everything to keep him away from her body. Then he sat on the big bed and looked at her with a crocodile smile. Hassan said in a frightened and stuttering voice, "Please sit down and relax. I didn't come here to rape you or beg you to give me your body. I have come to explain a misunderstanding between you and me. I'm not the competitive, selfish, cheap person you think I am. I know that since I signed the marriage contract between you and your brother Omar, you have started to hate me. I don't blame you for that because you don't know the whole truth. I have had to do what I did. If I hadn't done what I did, you would have been dead and gone a long time ago. I decided to sign the marriage contract because I wanted to save your life from Sammy's angry father. He planned to kill you in a fatal car accident. He even bribed one of his drivers to hit and kill you with his car while you and your sister Ferdos were going to school or returning home. Even today, he hates you so much and refers to you as a dirty, poor whore who separated him from his beloved, college-educated son Sammy and sent him behind bars for a quite long time. Therefore, if it weren't for me, he would have killed you a long time ago. Even today, he is thinking of arranging your murder with his menacing bodyguards that you saw sitting with him outside. But I restrained his anger and stopped his hands from killing you. In those days when I learned through my father, the great and famous politician, Mr. Majub al-Halali, about Sammy's father's plan to kill you, I approached him and asked him to stop his plot to kill you. I told him that I love Intisar very much and I am ready to do anything to save her life. At first he refused to listen to me. With much pleading and arguments, I finally managed to convince him to give up his evil plot. He agreed only when I suggested to him that I would marry the poor girl Intisar, who does not have a good education and is not from a great family, and then I would prevent her from marrying your rich son Sammy, who is the only university graduate student you have among your sons and daughters. His two friends, Imam Maulana Sheikh Marzouk and my father, the politician Saad Majub al-Halali, also intervened and persuaded him to accept my wise proposal. Maulana took my side because he wanted Sammy to marry his daughter Samia. When he agreed with us, I approached your half-brother Omar and asked him to marry me, his half-sister Intisar. When your older brother, Omar accepted my engagement to his sister's hand in a halal Islamic marriage. I took him to Imam Sheikh Marzouk al-Mubarak and asked him to contract my marriage with you. As I have mentioned, Imam Maulana liked the idea and welcomed it because he wanted the rich son and university graduate handsome Sami to marry his daughter Samaya, who completed 12th grade, and no man came to ask her hand in marriage because she was an obese and timid girl. Moreover, there was a rumor that she was impregnated by her African lover Haider, who was her neighbor, and delivered an illegitimate baby, and her Arab mother committed infanticide and killed the infant through strangling and burying his remains in her house compound. Haider's father was considered Abed Shurjia, or an ex-slave of the tribe of Shurjia. For that reason, Maulana and his wife, because they are from the Jalia tribe, refused to allow their Arab daughter to marry a boy who has an African slave root. Mr. Osman Al-Taib thought that my marriage with you would stop his rich son from continuing his reckless emotional friendship and kill his crazy love with the poor girl Intisar. He understood that when you marry me, his rich son, the university graduate, Sami, might agree to marry the virtuous girl, Samia, the daughter of Imam Sheikh Marzouk. He didn't know about the sex scandal of the daughter of the Imam of the largest mosque in Gadaref city. After telling his half-true and half-false story, the rejected lover, Hassan, stopped talking and looked to see how far his words had convinced his sexual victim. When he saw no reaction on her part, he resumed in a voice brimming with incredulity and suspicion. Now I've told you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. My beloved girlfriend Intisar, here is my hand extended to you, and it is full of love and peace. My love for you has not died and never will. My love for you is real and everlasting. It was a love that was not motivated by any sexual desire or selfish lust for your unparalleled beauty and sexy body. It is pure, sincere, and angelic love. It is sacrificial love full of sacrifice. I am ready to take a bullet in my heart to save your life from those who want to harm you, or even try to touch one of your fingers or remove a single hair from your head. I love you today as I loved you in those days. If I have wronged you, I am now ready to ask you for forgiveness. My deep love for you is stronger than the love of the crazy lover Kays for his beautiful beloved Arab girl Layla, and more sincere than Romeo's love for his beloved Juliet. It is like the love of Antar for Abla, for whom he crossed the scary empty quarter in the Sahara Desert and brought to her father from the King Naaman in Iraq 1,000 red she-camels as her dowry. I know, Intisar, that you have come to your senses now. You understood that you and Sami are separated forever. You can't go to him and he can't come back to you. He became like a dead person in your life. Your only chance for salvation is to rebuke Satan, leave your hateful apostasy from Islam, leave the false religion of Christianity, and return to the religion of truth of your ancestors' Islam. If you do this, you will be pardoned by the Sharia court, but if you refuse to do so and decline to accept our halal Islamic marriage relationship and will not consider me your legal Muslim husband, not only will you lose your beloved Sami, but you will also lose your life. I'll give you time to think about what I told you. Tomorrow at the same time I will be back. My dear beloved Intisar, you must be ready with your final answer. Once again, I would like to remind you that your life and death are in your hands. Your only hope of deliverance is to abandon your hateful apostasy and accept me as your only lawful husband. The Islamic Sharia regards your secret Christian marriage with Sami as adultery. As I told you, I will not beg you to accept me as your husband or try to force you to surrender your body to me against your will. If you want to accept me, I want you to do so freely and willingly. Then Hassan turned his face away from Intisar's face and walked toward the door and exited the room. When the selfish, lowly lover left the room and closed the door behind him, his victim, Intisar, remained standing in her place. Her fists in her clenched hands were still ready to strike. She didn't seem to believe that he wouldn't suddenly come back and attack and try to rape her. Although she heard his story and every word he said to her, Intisar did not believe a single word of it. She knows that he was afraid of her, and that is why he told those lies to gain her sexy body and rape her without any resistance and struggle on her part. She also understood that he is a selfish person whose only wish is to seduce her. His only goal in life is to possess her sexy body, rape her even for one night, and satisfy his selfish and insatiable lust, which only the flames of hell can satisfy. After that, he wouldn't care whether she lived or died. If the Sharia court sentences her to death by stoning for her alleged adultery with her Christian husband, Sammy, then he, like her supposed only real Muslim husband, will be the first man to throw stones on her body, which is buried in the ground up to her neck. Therefore, the imprisoned Christian bride, Intisar, decided once again to never allow him to touch her holy immaculate body and desecrate it by raping her or approaching her sexually. And if he dared to do so, she would do everything in her power to prevent him from raping her. She wouldn't hesitate to kill him if that was the only way to get him away from her. His false story made her hate him even more than before. Intisar knew how the two evil plots of the two Islamic marriages were carried out against her late, innocent sister Firdaus, and against her inside the den of the thieves of the poisonous snake's office, the hunchbacked, lame, and bald man Osman al-Tayyib, the devil incarnate. The two marriage contracts were not concluded in front of the Grand Mosque. They were hatched in the office of the despicable old geezer by the Mazoon Maulana Sheikh Marzouk with their criminal half-brother Omar, who acted as their guardian because their father, Ibrahim, had passed away. After that, the judge of the Sharia court and the police of the city of Gadaref helped them achieve their evil plots against two innocent sisters who were sold and bought as if they were sex slaves who have no freedom and no will to fulfill their destinies or choose their life partners, whom they love and look forward to marrying them, Sammy and Silla. Intisar, her sisters Farida and Badriya, and their friends Sammy, Silla, and Walid Hamza learn the truth through the secret recording confession of the lustful man, Hajj Muhammad, who is the mastermind of these two sinister plots. Even her sister, Badriya, revealed to her about the visit of the rejected lover, Hassan, to the house of the impostor, Hajj Muhammad. When she, Farida, Firdaus, Silla, and Sammy went to Mr. Majub al-Hilali, he told them a completely different false story than what his son told her today. The father falsely claimed that she was in love with his only son, Hassan, and promised to marry him, but when she found the handsome son Sammy, the son of the richest man in town, she abandoned his son and led him to despair, suicide, and about to die of heartbreak and deep sorrow for the loss of his beautiful beloved, Intisar. That's why the corrupt politician claimed to have agreed to marry his son to his unfaithful ex-girlfriend in order to save his life. Today, his selfish and cowardly son created another false dramatic cinematic story in which he made himself the brave hero who saved the life of the beautiful heroine from her death in a car accident at the hands of the evil movie traitor or villain Osman al-Tayyib. After the so-called incomplete Muslim husband, Hassan, leaving the room, the alleged disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, continued to stand in her corner until her tired feet were no longer able to carry her violated body because of the beatings in prison by her Muslim guards and fellow inmates. So, she sat in her corner and kept watching the door. Fatigue, exhaustion, and sleepiness finally overcame her again, and she fell asleep. She suddenly woke up when she heard the door open and a man crept inside. She rose to her feet and clenched her fists to fight with her sworn enemy. But she saw the same old man who had come before and brought food. He is holding another tray of food in his hands. This time the food tray is bigger than the ones he brought before. Then the old man put the new food down without looking at her or saying a word to her and carried the old food away. He did not even say hello to her when he entered or say goodbye to her when he left. He immediately got out and closed the door behind him. Intisar could now see daylight filling the room. She understood that the second new day had come and hence she slept longer this time. She sat down and looked at the food. Hunger pangs tempt her to open the large tray of food and eat her meal. Yet Intisar ignored the temptation and continued to watch the door. Hours pass as slowly as centuries. The so-called incomplete Muslim wife, Intisar, continued to wait for her sworn enemy, the alleged imperfect Muslim husband, Hassan, to come again and try to rape her to complete their legal Islamic marriage. She knows he will be back sooner or later. This time her prediction was fulfilled faster than last night. The rejected lover returned shortly after sunset. As soon as he entered, the imprisoned bride rose to her feet and clenched her fists. But now her hands were not raised to fight as they were before. When he saw her frowning face, he smiled at her. "Have you made your final decision, my beloved wife Intisar?" Hassan asked politely. His alleged Muslim wife remained silent, as if he had not spoken to her. Hassan continued, "Silence means acceptance. In our Islamic culture, when the proposed Muslim girl remains silent, this means that she has accepted the marriage engagement with her fiancé, but she is ashamed to say so." After he uttered those words, he slowly walked towards her. As he approached her, he extended his arms and was about to embrace her. But his alleged incomplete Muslim wife pushed him away and walked back. The so-called incomplete Muslim husband fell on the bed as if he had been hit by a bullet fired in the head at close range. A liar, a coward, and a selfish man. "Get away from me, you impudent one. I know exactly how you and the other evil conspirators devised the two evil plots against me and my late, innocent sister Firdaus. I also know how the judge of the Sharia court and the Gaddarif police helped you put your first evil plot into action. You are a cheap and dirty man, so you went to my criminal half-brother Omar and bought me from him. You treated me like a slave girl to be sold by a slave trader like Omar the Wicked and bought by a selfish and cowardly man like you. Never dream of touching even one finger on my hand. My shoes are cleaner than your dirty face. If you dare touch me, Hassan, I will kill you." Intisar spoke these words as she clenched her right hand into a fist and her left hand pointed a finger at his face like a loaded gun ready to be shot if he ever approached her again. The so-called disobedient Muslim wife who was fleeing from the verdict of obedience that she said the same words and issued the same warning to her alleged legitimate Muslim husband, Hassan. Inside the Sharia court in Gaddarif city, in front of the Sharia judge and his jury and members of the imprisoned old man's gang and his spies. Then the imperfect husband who had fallen got up from the bed and looked at her face. He saw the same angry face, which he saw last night. A girl's face is full of anger, bitterness, determination, and death. He became very afraid and wanted to run away from her but hesitated to do so. He knew and understood that he would be thought of as a coward and a vanquished man by those evil men who sit outside. Accordingly, he decided to start fighting with her and attempting to rape her. "I have tried to persuade you to repent your abominable deeds of disobedience, apostasy, and adultery and then accept me as your lawful Muslim husband, but you rejected my peaceful and generous offer. Now I have the right to take from your body by force what the Islamic law has given me backed by divine religious authority. Whether you accept me or not, I am your only legal Muslim husband, and your Christian marriage to a Sami is considered by the Sharia court and every Muslim in this country to be shameful adultery. Therefore, by the order of the divinely revealed fatwa of the Honorable Mufti of all the houses of the Muslims of Sudan, I must sleep with you tonight on the bed and fuck your pussy by my big dick tomorrow also. And after that I do not care if they hang you on the gallows and execute you or stone you to death. I don't even care if they cut off your damned head with a double-edged sword for your abominable and unforgivable religious crimes. Remember that this room and the entire place is guarded by policemen armed to the teeth and fierce and huge police dogs, each of which can devour a horse and eat it alive. My spies, who are my 3 dangerous bodyguards, are also sitting outside, ready to protect me from you and also prevent you from escaping from me. You cannot dream of escaping from me again, as you did in Gaddarif city. Like it or not, I should have sex with your open pussy that was fucked by Sammy's cock in shameful fornication." Chapter 83. The disobedient Muslim wife fights her lawful Muslim husband in the house of obedience. When the so-called incomplete husband spoke his warning and threatening words, he suddenly rushed towards his alleged disobedient Muslim wife and pushed her against the wall. The imprisoned Christian bride, Intisar, was taken by surprise and fell to the ground, slashing her face. She couldn't push him away at first. The rest of her body crashed against the wall, giving her an excruciating pain. However, Intisar quickly got over the pain and got up and went after him and pushed him. It made him fall back onto the bed, but he quickly stood up. He again came after her and attacked her. This time she is ready for him. She scratched his face with her long fingernails and kicked him in the stomach with her right foot. He pushed her back until her body turned and then kicked her on the back and grabbed her hair and started pulling it. As he held her head, she struggled for some time to free her hair from his hands. When she could not free herself, she used her left leg and kicked his private parts like a furious horse kicking her cruel master with her hoof. It was a painful kick that forced him to free her hair. Once she was freed, she fled in terror. Hassan started chasing her around the room. Intisar jumped on the bed. He jumped after her. She jumped off the bed and he followed behind her. She doesn't want him to grab her again and pull her hair. She realizes that her long hair is a weakness on her part and he may use it as a deadly weapon against her. He finally got over her and his hands grabbed her by her waist behind her back. She cannot use her hands or legs to hit or kick him and free her body from him. She struggled violently to free herself but could not. He embraces her with both hands from behind as a lion grabs the back of a helpless gazelle. He used his masculine strength and forced her down on the hard floor of the room, unscrewing the door and windows. Intisar knelt down and continued to fight for her freedom. He took advantage of the situation and grabbed her left hand, twisted it, and put it behind her back. She started screaming from the terrible pain her hand was twisting. He brought his left hand and tried to close her mouth, preventing her from screaming. Intisar managed to grab his hand and bite it. Her sharp teeth dug into his flesh until they hit his bones. She felt his blood flow into her mouth. Hassan felt a terrible pain like an electric current hit his finger, so he let her go. She immediately hit him in the face and ran away. He became enraged by her painful sting. He began cursing and threatening her while his vile mouth frothed like a raging camel. Then he started chasing her again. This time he is after her because he wants to hurt her rather than rape her. Intisar sensed danger and started screaming. She fears he will kill her if he can get his hands on her again. He managed to reach her and capture her body. He slapped her violently with his left hand on her right cheek and pushed her onto the bed. He is a left-handed man, so Intisar felt as if a lion slapped her face. Her cheek bulged from his painful blow. She fell on her back and a big sledgehammer hit her face. He knelt over her body while his hands pressed her head against the bed. She kicks and screams. He's sweating and shivering. He felt like a big dog snuggling up to a small cat. Intisar continued to struggle under his heavy body. Hassan brought his mouth near her face to kiss or bite her. She hit his mouth with her forehead. Blood flowed from his mouth. He left her and jumped back. She pushed him and ran away from him. He didn't chase her this time. Instead, he grabbed his bleeding mouth and looked at her. She is now standing in her old corner. When she realized he didn't want to attack her, she attacked him instead. He hit her with his fist on her chest before she could touch him. His hit him this time so hard that it made her fall to the ground. As soon as she fell, he jumped over her body. She couldn't struggle much this time. She is very tired and exhausted and feels unbearable pain in her chest. He took her Islamic clothes and tore them. Seeing that her dress was opened in half, she gathered what was left of her strength and began to fight back. Despite her struggles, he kept tearing her abaya and veil. She kicked him with her legs. She pushed him with her hands. She slapped him with her palms. All those blows were unable to hold him back. He had become like a man of stone, and now nothing could stop him from raping her and devouring her exposed body. He saw her black panties, and that made him crazy and obsessed. He became like a wild beast that saw the exposed meat of a deer. He continued to pluck and take off her Islamic clothes piece by piece. She is now only left in her bra and underwear. He grabbed her bra and pulled it from her big breasts. She kicked him in the stomach with her right leg. That last kick forced him to stop. He stopped to tear off the last covering of her naked body and stepped back. When she was able to free herself, she also stood up and walked backwards, staggering and walking like a drunk. For a while they both struggled to breathe. The imprisoned Christian bride now stands away in her corner, viewing her alleged Muslim husband as a dangerous monster. He looks at her with eyes full of lust. His mouth is still bleeding. He could now see her sexy naked body standing in front of him. It was covered only by a small piece of black underwear. The rest of her Islamic clothes, the abaya, the veil, the gown, the bra, and the Sudanese sari, are all slashed and torn and scattered everywhere. Piece after piece, the human beast tore it to pieces as a wild animal tears the flesh of its helpless prey, rendered defenseless. The remaining small piece of clothing hung like a bandage between her thighs and her waist. The sight of her seductive naked body made him try again. His dick now stands erect in his dirty pants like a gun on top of a military tanker. He is like a hungry beast that has been exposed to fresh meat. His animal lust completely got the better of him, and he attacked her to rape her. Frightened, Intisar started hitting him with all her might on his head, face, and body, but she couldn't get him away from her. It seems that he has turned into a man of stone, the body of which is made of iron. He reached out his left hand and took off the rest of her dress. Intisar got completely naked. Hassan is holding her little black underwear in his hand like a black flag of terrorist. Then he took her right hand and wrapped it behind her back again. She screams in terrible pain. Then he forced her to sit on the ground. She's struggling less this time around. She had become completely exhausted and defeated by the savage human man. She understood that her feminine strength could let her down at any time. She loses faith in her ability to stop him from raping her. She finally realized that her feminine power could no longer struggle and triumph against his naturally superior masculine power. He, too, understood that he had defeated her. She is now at his mercy. He can do with her whatever he wants. He can rape or kill her and she can't do anything about it. Then he forced her under his heavy weight. She can now fight only with her mouth and eyes. She screams and groans and figs at him. She cursed him with every bad name she knew. He didn't bother about her insulting words. His only goal now is to force himself inside her. Intisar was crushed, shattered, and completely defeated by Hassan. She does not match him in size and ability. He's tall and has a massive body that made her look like the young shepherd David the Hebrew boy next to the Philistine giant Goliath. So, she gives up her fruitless struggle and surrenders her body to him. Yet the defeated Christian bride is like the dying or drowning girl in the sea of darkness who will cling to whatever comes her way. When she felt his large erect cock begin to rub itself against her exposed small pussy, she gathered her remaining strength and resumed her struggle to stop him from raping her. She grabbed his hair, pulled him, scratched his face, punched him, and spit on him several times. She is crying and screaming at the top of her voice for help. All her efforts could not take off his huge body from her tender nude body. She felt his big penis find its target and began forcing it inside her tiny pussy. At that critical moment, Intisar grabbed his shoulder and bit him. Her teeth are like those of an angry lioness. They sank back inside his body and caused an unbearably intense pain. The cowardly man started screaming for help. When no one came to rescue him, he struggled violently to free his shoulder from her powerful bite. He used his left hand and hit her hard with his fist on her head and tried jumping out of her body. But her sharp teeth did not leave the flesh of his shoulder. He began to scream even louder as his mouth frothed like a raging bull. He hit her all over her naked body to free his shoulder from her sharp teeth. Her teeth seemed to be like sharp nails driven into his flesh. Finally, he pulled his body violently and released it. Some of his flesh remained in her mouth and stuck to her teeth. Her mouth was filled with abundant, bleeding blood. Then he hits her in the face and runs towards the door. This time, his blow was so strong that it knocked her to the ground. She got up and ran after him. Then she took the tray of food and threw it at him. Some pots hit him on the back and the food smeared his nude body. He reached the door before she could reach him, opened it, and ran for his life. Intisar ran to the door, but he locked it behind him from the outside. She has reached the door too late. She started knocking on the door with both hands while yelling loudly, "You coward, coward man. Open the door. Come back again, I will kill you. I will break your head. Come here, Fearful man. Intisar continued banging hysterically for a long time. As she was banging on the door, she was also shouting her threats. She tried to open the door by force, but she couldn't. After a while, she felt tired and exhausted. She stops her fruitless attempts to force him back or open the door. Then she backed into her corner and sat down. She is anxious and gasping for breath. Every part of her body caused her a lot of pain. Her teeth, forehead, cheeks, lips, hands, shoulders, thighs, hips, legs, and feet are bleeding copiously. Her clothes are torn and scattered in bits and pieces all over the room. She is now naked, wounded, and completely defeated. She is in a miserable situation. Never in her life did she expect that she would turn into such a helpless state. Even during the first rapist who attempted to rape her in the brothel house of the pimp lady, Mother Nafisa, and the second rape's attempt in the house of Major Alcinisny, neither of them gave her the terrible pain and sense of humiliation that she is going through today in the third attempt to rape her at the hands of the human beast, Hassan Majub al-Hilali. Even wandering the streets of Khartoum for 3 days without shelter, money, and shoes did not hurt her as she feels now. Today, she hates herself and abhors her luck that made her path cross his way. She wished she had not been born as a beautiful girl so that her beauty would attract such an obsessed lover who became sex-manic after her sexy body and unmatchable beauty. She wished she had died and gone before such a fateful day came in her life. While Intisar thinks about her miserable fate and bad luck in life, her eyes are wide open, but she cannot distinguish the things in front of her vision. She closed and opened her eyes several times before she could clearly see the things around her. Her mind soon after began to function normally again. Her eyes could now discern the physical world around her. She saw the bed. Then she saw the bed sheet, pillow, and mattress had been removed from their place. She turned her attention to the food tray and utensils, which were strewn all over the place. She saw 2 glass bowls broken into small pieces. Then she saw the spoon, fork, and knife lying near the door. Her aimlessly wandering eyes suddenly stopped and focused on one of those things. Although it is a very small thing, the so-called defeated disobedient Muslim wife who were almost brutally raped by her alleged Muslim husband saw it as large as a double-edged sword. She rose to her feet and went to her last weapon of defense. She grabbed it quickly as if she was afraid someone might take it before she could get it. With a trembling fist, Intisar picked it up. She wants to hide it under her clothes, but she realizes that her body is completely naked, and she no longer wears any clothes. Even her red bra and black underwear have been torn. An idea crept into her mind out of nowhere, as if it had come out of another world. Intisar felt that a sudden thought arose in her mind, as if it had been revealed to her by a heavenly angel. Then she decided to put it into practice quickly, fearing that it would disappear from her mind. She went to bed and began to rearrange the mattress, sheet, and pillow. When she successfully completed this task, she hid her weapon under the mattress. After that, the so-called disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, went to her corner and sat waiting for her sworn enemy, her alleged Muslim husband Hassan, to attack her and try to rape her again. She is quite sure that he will come back and try to force her to surrender her body to him to satisfy his animal sexual instinct in it. He may come again with 1 or 2 of his spies and ask them to help him seize her naked body in order to consummate his incomplete marriage with her. The evil man might also order them to gang rape her. Meanwhile, the chief of the spies Tia and the other 2 thugs, Yeager and Nisar, transport the cowardly Muslim husband, Hassan, to a nearby hospital for treatment. He was treated for the many injuries inflicted by his disobedient Muslim wife on his face, teeth, shoulder, and back. The groom, Hassan, told a doctor and some hospital nurses that he was severely beaten by his new bride, Intisar, on their first wedding night. No one raised the flag of suspicion because that is a common thing among newlyweds and brides. After his treatment, the hospital staff allowed him to go home. Before releasing the injured groom, they advised him to refer his complaint against his violent bride to the police authority if he so wished. But the evil man decided not to go to the police. The selfish Muslim husband expected that the police would take his violent Muslim wife away from him, and this might prevent him from raping her and enjoying her sexy body, even for once. When he returned, he slept for the rest of the night. He may not have been able to sleep if he had not taken some sleeping pills. The next day, the alleged Muslim husband, Hassan, made an agreement with his spy chief, Tia, and the other two serial killers, Nasser and Geiger, that if his disobedient legal Muslim wife, Intisar, refused to allow him to insert his cock into her pussy and fuck her until he ejaculated his semen into her womb and make her pregnant, he might need their help. The chief of spies suggested that the lawful Muslim husband who had been defeated for 2 nights by his dangerous bride either go with one of their own or take up a gun to defend himself against his violent first Muslim wife. The evil man accepted the second advice and decided to take a big stick with him. He also asked his 3 spies to stand by in case of emergency. He has given them a secret word, and when they hear it they must rush to his rescue. Then they have to help him overcome that violent and dangerous wife so that he can have sex with her hairy pussy by inserting his dick in it and complete their marriage together. The password is Hassan is at risk. The so-called incomplete Muslim husband knew and understood that he had only 1 night left. If he had not raped her that night, he would never dream of seeing her again for the rest of his life. Hassan learned from the police authority that those 3 nights are only to meet the definition of a halal Islamic marriage contract. Therefore, if the deficient legal Muslim husband did not have sex with his imprisoned disobedient Muslim wife on that last night, the report would still come out that Hassan Majub al-Halali had sex with his legal Muslim wife, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, and thus fulfilled the definition of the marriage contract in Islam. For this reason, the rejected, selfish, and lustful lover decided by all available means to rape his victim that night and complete his marriage contract with her. On the first night, he tried to use diplomacy and deceit, but failed to cheat her and win her heart. On the second night, he used his ultimate masculine strength, but couldn't fulfill his life's dream of having sex with his crazy one-sided love idol. The third and final night, by hook or by crook, the sexually obsessed man, Hassan, decided to impose himself on Intisar, break her arrogance and stubbornness, remove determination, and weaken her resistance power, and have sex with her. By inserting his dick into her pussy and fucking her. If he is unable to subdue her on his own, he will call Tia, Jaeger, and Nasser and order them to tie her hands and feet to the bed and spread her legs until he successfully meets the definition of their Islamic marriage contract. He determined in his evil mind he should do to her what the old geezer did to her underage sister. Indeed, it was the evil idea of the vile old man for the Muslim husband Hassan to take the huge man Tia with him from the first night. The old man gave this advice because of his experience with his so-called dangerous fourth Muslim wife, Firdus, Intisar's younger sister, who made 2 attempts to kill him in the hotel, but his pimp servant Harun saved him from her. But the selfish lover Hassan, in his pride and arrogance, promised the old man to take Chief Tia with him as his bodyguard, but he went for 2 nights alone to his dangerous Muslim wife. These 2 nights proved to him that his so-called lawful, disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar, has a strong will and hates him bitterly, and would have killed him had he not escaped from her and fled in terror as a cowardly man. However, Hassan lied to the fire-breathing dragon Osman Iblis al-Tayyib and told him that from the first night he had subjugated and humiliated his rebellious wife and had sex with her against her wishes. The old man became very pleased to hear that at last the poor girl and the rebellious runaway wife had been captured, humiliated, and raped. He was happy because her Muslim husband had sex with her fucking circumcised pussy. He now looks forward to seeing her stoned to death or hanged at the gallows for her many heinous crimes, especially her abominable religious crimes of apostasy, adultery, treason, and attempted elopement with his ill-fated son, Sami. All this time, the devil Osman al-Tayyib and his cult imam, the false prophet, Maulana Satan Marzouk, are staying in their luxurious rooms at the 5-star Sheraton International Hotel and are happily, joyfully, and interestedly following the developments of the suspected apostate Muslim woman's case. or what is called the dirty whore, the poor girl, and the disobedient Muslim wife, Intisar. They both determined not to return to their home city of Gadaref until the damned whore is subjected to humiliation, rape, trial, condemnation, and stoned to death. Both evil friends also decided to take part in the stoning of the whore of Babylon, and together with other Muslims must send her to hell where her damned sister Firdaus is now, and both of them burn in an unquenchable fire forever and ever. Meanwhile, the imprisoned Christian bride, Intisar, spent the rest of that night struggling with her fatigue, her wounds, the unbearable pain, and the lack of sleep. She is anxiously awaiting the return of the rejected coward lover to kill him for what he did to her. Many times, she could not control her sleepiness and fell asleep. When this happens to her automatically, she immediately gets up and looks at the door. At the crack of dawn, she fell into a deep and long sleep without her desire. Intisar was woken up by the old food man when he came in the middle of the day. As usual, he put the old tray of food and collected the shattered and broken utensils. This time the old man looked pitifully at the completely naked teenage girl. She is sitting in the same corner where he saw her sitting before. A few tears fell from his eyes. He saw all her clothes torn and scattered everywhere and understood what a violent rape had happened to her during those 2 nights. But he picked up the broken pots and left the room without saying a word to the brutally wounded and raped girl. The few tears of the kind old man reminded Intisar of her late father. When her father, Ibrahim, died, she was 7 years old. In her heart, she wished her father had not died. If he was still alive, her criminal half-brother Omar would not have sold her into marriage as a slave to the evil man Hassan. Islamic law did not allow anyone else to marry her to any man except for her guardian, who would be her biological father, Ibrahim. His sudden death brought great disasters to his family. His 2 daughters were treated like slave girls and were sold and bought in 2 Islamic halal marriages. Intisar once again remembered her late sister. She concluded that the blood of her innocent sister, Firdaus, had brought upon her all the evils she had gone through and is still going through. She wept bitterly and begged her sister to forgive her for what she had done to her through her selfish love for the rich man's son. Intisar regrets for the first time her irrational and hasty decision to continue her love affair with her lover, Sami, even though everyone tried to prevent her from doing so. Today, she envies her late sister because she did not suffer long after she was kidnapped, raped, and brutally killed. But after her escape from the verdict of obedience and arrest at the international airport, she suffered a lot and is still suffering. She paid dearly for her mad love. She eventually understands that she will lose her life because of her fruitless love for the rich man's son. Many people also expected that, including some of her family members, she would run away from her home and become a homeless girl and a prostitute and land in prison or destroy her life and die like a stray dog in the streets. Nevertheless, the disobedient, apostate, and imprisoned Muslim wife resolved not to go to the gallows until she had sent her sworn enemy to his grave before her. This time, the detained Christian bride understood that if she did not eat some food and drink some water, she would remain weak because of the pangs of hunger and thirst that could not be controlled anymore. At this critical time of her miserable life, Intisar remembered that her late sister Firdaus mentioned in her love letter to her beloved Scylla that the evil old man could not rape her until he intentionally starved her and weakened her feminine strength of resistance. Therefore, she knew that if she did not eat food and drink water, the same evil would happen to her. So, she got to her feet and went to her new tray of food and opened it. Within minutes, the starved naked girl swallowed whatever she found in it. She also drank some juice and water. She felt that her sight became clear and that some of her strength was restored to her naked body, which was afflicted with many wounds because it was brutally beaten by the rapist, whose evil act was justified by the law of her country, supported, and encouraged by the law of his Islamic religion. After that, the third innocent girl went back to her corner and waited for her rapist to return. As usual, the hours dragged on one after the other, as if it were centuries, until it was time for sunset for the 3rd day, which the so-called recalcitrant Muslim wife spent fighting against a usurper who falsely named her legitimate Muslim husband. At dusk, the imprisoned Christian bride Intisar saw the door open and the devil incarnate Hassan filling the room with his demonic presence. This time she saw half of his hideous face covered in a big bandage. In his right hand he holds a long stick. The alleged rebellious Muslim wife understood what the stick meant to her. Then her so-called Muslim husband walked directly to her and stood in front of her like Satan. She also saw him standing before her eyes like a demon manifested in terror in his ugliest form. Without saying a word, he raised the big rod as far as it could be above his head, and with all his strength lowered it on her bare shoulder. Intisar was terrified and felt unbearable pain and started screaming out loud. He raised his hand again and continued to beat her naked body mercilessly. With each blow, the flesh of her naked body opened and blood flowed from it abundantly. She suffers from pain that no woman can bear, even if her body is made of iron. His beating was more painful than the beating of the interrogating policewomen whom they tortured her in the interrogation room on the day they extracted from her bleeding mouth what they claimed was her heinous crimes. Intisar continued to scream and moved to the ground like a rattlesnake that had been hit in the head. When Hassan realized that he had weakened her body and broken her feminine resistance, he stopped and looked at her. The third innocent girl, Intisar, was still screaming and rolling on the ground like a young woman who had been stabbed all over her body with sharp knives before she was raped. Then the evil man opened his vile mouth and said to her, "You are like the disobedient Muslim wife who will not obey her husband unless he hits her with his stick, tames her with his whip, and then fucks her pussy with his phallus." "Please don't hit me again," Intisar begged him, while she was screaming. "If you do not want me to go on with this severe chastisement, then get up from the ground and lie down on the bed and spread your legs, and open your adulterous pussy for me so I could fuck you with my dick, because I am your lawful Muslim husband." "I can't get up from the ground. My body causes me so much unbearable pain that I can't move one of my limbs, which became numb from the wounds and beatings." Then Hassan leaned over Intisar and carried her naked body to the bed. She didn't fight back or try to hurt him. She just let him take her to bed like a baby. She was now lying on her back like a lifeless body. She spread her legs apart and showed him her pussy. She made him see clearly the thick, black pubic hair of her vagina. He looks with lust at her nakedness, her breasts, and her nude body lying before his eyes. He hesitated for a moment to touch her fully exposed body. He is still afraid that she might suddenly turn into a fierce lioness and attack him. Then he sat beside her with the big stick in his left hand. He then showed her the long rod in front of her eyes again. When she saw that the staff was raised to her face, she placed her left hand over her mouth as a sign of awe at his greatness and complete obedience to his authority as her legal Muslim husband. Hassan concluded that he had tamed his disobedient Muslim wife and that she was unlikely to attack him any longer. Then the beast man quickly took off his wolf's clothes. The ugly sight of his naked body and fully erect penis made her feel disgusted and close her eyes. Without saying a word, the crocodile climbed onto the body of its prey and began to devour it. His rough hands quickly roamed all over her tender, naked body. Intisar bit her lips to calm the pain she was feeling while Hassan's hands moved like the claws of a hungry vulture on her flesh. He tried to kiss her, but he couldn't because she was swinging her head and blocking his attempt to bite her sweet lips. She feels the same terrifying feeling that an injured and immobile young woman would experience when a venomous snake is about to bite her mouth. She also feels his heavy body as if a venomous bristly cobra was moving on her nude body. She also feels it like a huge hedgehog moving over her naked body and its long thorns piercing her everywhere. Then the beast man grabbed her by her head and prevented her from swinging. Intisar hid her lips inside her mouth and gripped them tightly with her teeth. She preferred to bite her lips and tongue rather than let him lick and chew them like a mad dog or a cannibal man. The brutal man ignored her lips and focused on her exposed genitals. He began to rub his body against hers as if he was burning with uncontrollable lust and only rape could extinguish his sexual fires. Intisar felt his big phallus begin to force itself aimlessly into her secret parts. She could feel his cock piercing her like a sharp knife. Then his dick found her pussy and began forcibly inserting itself in it. Intisar understood that it would not be long before the evil man raped her completely and emptied the filth of his semen inside her pure womb, making her pregnant, defiling her and crushing her forever. So, the imprisoned Christian wife decided to act quickly before her so-called Muslim husband could rape her and desecrate her holy body. Her right hand quickly crept under the mattress and grabbed hold of her concealed weapon. Now the rejected, selfish lover Hassan is completely blinded by his lust. Intisar now feels his huge cock forced into her tight pussy and begins to go in and out quickly like a chainsaw cutting her in half. This feeling gave her a painful and ugly feeling. Her hatred for him intensified. Intisar grabbed the knife and raised it above his head. Hassan did not see what his victim's hand was holding and what it was holding above him. Then she Christian bride closed her teeth tightly and plunged the knife deeply into his heart. The reaction of the rapist is like a camel being hit on the head with an axe before being slaughtered. He became frothing and foam came out of his despicable mouth. From above her sweating body, Intisar quickly pushed his bleeding body. Then she got up and jumped off the bed. She picked up the knife again and removed it out of his heart. Then she started stabbing him hysterically in his stomach, chest, neck, face, head, thighs, legs, and arms. With all this, she fears that the human monster will come back to life and continue to rape her. When the demon's body became lifeless, she grabbed his penis with her left hand and cut it off by her knife. Then she opened his foamy mouth and forced his bloody penis down his throat. The horrifying sight of his lifeless corpse with blood gushing from every part of his body covered in many knife stabs made her terrify and shiver. Then the brave Christian bride began to see that everything around her seemed to spin and move quickly. The third innocent girl, Intisar Ibrahim Mustafa Jabir, staggered backwards and fell unconscious on the hard floor of the closed room next to her murdered rapist, her alleged legal Muslim husband Hassan Majub al-Hilali.